I call the member for Fairfax.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Recognising the link between corporate tax rates, investments and jobs is not rocket science. Lower tax rates means more revenue is retained by businesses, which means more for investment in those businesses and therefore more jobs. More vigorous, more profitable businesses with more jobs means a growing national economy, which means more prosperity to be shared by all. It's a simple, well-tested equation in capitalist systems. Now, the Labor Party used to understand that, Mr Deputy Speaker, but in listening to the Shadow Treasurer's speech just now, I genuinely believe they might be living in la-la land. The member for Hughes interjected wisely and asked if he would be prepared to, if the Shadow Treasurer would be prepared for him to read out some quotes from his book, and he denied that. And so let me do so. In 2013, the Shadow Treasurer, from whom we just heard, against company tax rates, said, "It's a Labor thing to have the ambition of reducing company tax because it promotes investment, creates jobs and drives growth." On ABC Lateline in 2014, the year after he wrote those words in his book, he said, "I'd like to see it lower over time. I think we've had 14 years of having corporate tax rates stable. That's too long. Over time, I'd like to see it lowered." On the 7:30 report, ABC in 2013, he said, "I think we should have the ambition of lowering company tax. It would be the approach that we would take, that our ambition to lower company tax rates because it would improve our overall international competitiveness." In 2015, the Shadow Treasurer said, "I would like to see the corporate tax rate come down over time. I've previously said that our nation should be aiming for, wait for it, a 25% corporate tax rate." This is the Shadow Treasurer from whom we've just heard the complete opposite. His get out of jail card today is, and I quote, "Only in a perfect world, only in a perfect world would the Shadow Treasurer accept a cut in corporate tax rates." So what does that actually mean? Does that mean his book can only be read when the Wicked Witch of Narnia is dead and Aslan the Lion takes over? Or is it the la-la land once the Greens and Labor get back into power one day, suddenly it's a perfect world and his book is relevant? So either he defies his own logic or indeed he's in la-la land. And it doesn't stop with the Shadow Treasurer, Mr Deputy Speaker. Indeed, on May the 2nd, 2010, the then Labor Prime Minister Kevin Rudd announced a reduction in the corporate tax rate from 30% to 28% for small businesses from 2012-13 and to all businesses from 2013-14. In June 2010, he told the Business Council of Australia the government's target is to bring it to 25%. The May announcement was part of the government's response to the Henry Tax Review, which had recommended a cut in the corporate tax rate to 25%. That same level that is being put to Parliament in this bill. On July the 2nd, 2010, the Gillard government reduced the cut proposed by former PM Rudd to 29%, citing the state of the economy, but never introduced the legislation. Never, Mr Deputy Speaker, did Labor actually introduce the legislation to implement it. And why? The Greens wouldn't support it. The then de facto government of the country, the Greens, with their nigh-on Marxist views of the world, denied the attempt by Labor to cut the corporate tax rate. The posture of bowing to the Greens has been fastidiously maintained under the leadership of the Labor Party by the backflipping leader of the opposition. In his 2015-16 budget reply speech, in contradiction of the views held by his two immediate predecessors, the opposition leader supported a cut in the corporate tax rate for small businesses and small businesses only to 25%. Tax cuts for larger businesses disappeared altogether from Labor tax policy. even though Julia Gillard in 2012 told the Parliament, "If you are against cutting company tax, you are against economic growth." This is the former Labor Prime Minister. "If you are against economic growth, you are against jobs." And Labor, especially the opposition leader, now not only formally supports the Greens' policy on corporate tax reform, but he supports the Greens' anti-capitalist rhetoric to boot. The attacks on big business by the opposition leader would not be out of place coming from Marx and Engels. His language, attacking big business, oozes with contempt. But unsurprisingly, given the record of the Leader of the Opposition, this has involved, yet again, a double backflip. Because in 2011, addressing former Prime Minister Rudd's policy for a cut from 30 to 28%, the now opposition leader said in this chamber, and I quote, "More capital means higher economic activity and higher wages." In 2011, he also said this: "As Australia is buffeted by the economic affairs overseas, we understand that lowering corporate tax assists the creation of jobs. And what can be more important in this country," he says, "than the creation of jobs?" And in a speech to the National Conference of the Australian Council of Social Services, the opposition leader said, "Friends, corporate tax reform helps Australia's private sector grow, and it creates jobs right up and down the income ladder." But Mr Deputy Speaker, the Greens, they said no. And the Leader of the Opposition promptly fell into line via another 180-degree U-turn, involving a whole new take on economics altogether and a whole new take on tax policy. And he stays in line with the Greens to this very day. Now, he argues, tax cuts, that's just trickle-down economics. The benefits all go overseas. Tax cuts don't boost employment, just inequality. In other words, he is now saying the polar opposite from what he was saying in 2011. The Leader of the Opposition clearly will say whatever he can say. He will do whatever he can do, no matter how deeply it might contradict his previous positions, to keep faith with a powerful left, a left in the Labor Party and outside of it, so that he himself can keep his own job. But please don't think it's just big business that the opposition leader doesn't like, Mr Deputy Speaker. He has a demonstrable track record of falling in line with the Greens when it comes to tax rates for small businesses too. For example, when the Greens in 2012 signalled under their then new leader, Christine Milne, that they would not support Labor's proposed corporate tax cut, she put a cut-off point on the Greens' support for tax relief for small businesses. And you know what that cut-off was, Mr Deputy Speaker? The Greens' cut-off was a maximum turnover of $2 million. Now, to give her some minor credit, there's no doubt that businesses with a turnover of under $2 million are vitally important to our economy. But it reflects now the smallest end of small business. In fact, they're often now referred to as micro businesses. And the meat in the small business sector are those with turnovers between $2 million and $10 million. These small businesses, as the Treasurer pointed out in his second reading speech, employ 3.4 million Australians. 3.4 million Australians are employed by small businesses with a turnover between 2 and 10 million. That's a huge contribution. But of course, the Leader of the Opposition dutifully again fell into line with Greens' policy, because Labor too now agrees that business above $2 million turnover can't have a tax cut. If there is to be a significant tax benefit to small businesses in this country, with the flow-on benefits that the opposition leader outlined himself in 2011, then it will be via the Coalition's plan. which is for a cut to 27.5% from the current 28.5% that was legislated by the Abbott government, down from 30%, and reaching 25% by 2026-27, without that artificial barrier of $2 million turnover favoured by the Greens and their fellow travellers, the Labor Party. Businesses with turnovers over 10 million will reach the same target of 25% via increases to the threshold for the 27.5% rate to 25 million in 2017-18, 50 million in 18-19, 100 million in 19-20, until all companies are covered by 2023-24. The rate itself will then be progressively cut from 27.5% until it reaches that 25% point for all businesses in 2026-27. Mr Deputy Speaker, these are urgently needed tax reforms. And as the Treasurer himself highlighted, we have gone from, in 2001, having one of the lowest corporate tax rates in the world to now among the highest. The average rate across the EU is 22.5%. Across the OECD, it is 25%. In our region, our current rate of 30% is way off pace. South Korea, 24%. Same as Laos and Malaysia. Thailand and Vietnam, 20%. Singapore and Taiwan, 17%, and Hong Kong, 16.5%. This chasm between our rates and the rates of our competitors and trading partners is a double-edged sword for our economy and for the Australians who want jobs. Not only are global companies less likely to invest here or expand here because of high tax rates, when they could be enjoying higher retention of their earnings elsewhere, some of our own companies may indeed move offshore to take advantage of more competitive rates. Those who criticise the plan should also contemplate, in light of these realities, the timeframes that are involved. The fact that these changes are phased in over a considerable period. The changes mean that a tax rate of 27.5% will reach the biggest of our businesses in 2023-24. It will be 2026-27. It's almost a decade from now before the rate hits 25%, and they still oppose it, Mr Deputy Speaker. Now, that's a fair way down the track when the New Zealand rate has been at 28% since 2011, and with Asia ranging right now from 24% to around 17%. These are numbers that give context to what this bill seeks to do. This is not a massive giveaway, as the Labor Party suggests. Having abandoned all reason in relation to its previous positions on corporate tax reform, it now protests. This is a measured, a responsible, a modest effort to ensure we retain a sufficient degree of international competitiveness to continue to attract and promote investment in our own country. Now, while our rates will still continue to be higher than some of our competitors, subject to events we cannot foresee elsewhere, we do have other positives that we can sell that will stand us still in good stead to attract investment to this country. We are a stable democracy. We are a secure nation. We live by the rule of law. Our financial safeguard institutions are globally well regarded. We have some of the strongest, safest banks in the world. We have a highly skilled workforce and a lifestyle that is the envy of many. We have world-class health and education systems and a reliable, trustworthy business culture. As long as we maintain these standards, we can continue to attract the level of investment that we have previously enjoyed by both domestic and international businesses, and our economy can grow with jobs and have opportunities for all. Even if our corporate tax rate, as we do bring it down, becomes simply ballpark competitive. And that's the aim here, Mr Deputy Speaker, a competitive rate, not a discount rate. It is difficult to be as upbeat about the future as we might like if this plan is rejected, which is what Labor and the Greens are wanting to do. Their opposition is just one of many instances where their policy positions have long ago lost touch with any semblance of reality. And so this is a gauntlet. This bill is a gauntlet for the Labor Party. one of many gauntlets that we need to throw down. Because only if they break from the Greens and come to common sense will Australia benefit.
I thank the member for Fairfax.